semester went by super fast, especially with the coronavirus and it's the way that has impacted our class, but ultimately that didn't affect the class content a whole lot, and I can still talk about my educational psychology final scrapbook. So, I first wanted to get into industry versus inferiority. Now, industry versus inferiority is kind of like a debate with 6 to 12-year-olds, which is school age children. Um, Industry is kind of like, using your skills to accomplish tasks in the classroom to make you feel good about yourself, like you can do things using your own skills and continuously develop those skills. The inferiority is when you compare your work to others and base your success off of others' work because you feel your work is inferior to theirs or that overall you are inferior to them as students. I can use this in my classroom because obviously it's a great deal in what I do as an early childhood educator because I need to know that some of my students may feel inferior to others, and I need to encourage them to use their sense of industry to know that not only are they unique, but they can do things on their own using their own skills and be good at different things rather than comparing their work to other students. Because when you compare your work to other students, you start to feel inferior, like their work is better than yours. The next concept that I wanted to get into is scaffolding. So, scaffolding is important because it was coined by Jerome Bruner in the 1970s to define the support of student skills within their zone of proximal development. Scaffolding does not show step by step how to do something, but it rather um, installs supports for students so that they can kind of work through it and eventually get to it on their own. Um, so the process goes like this. Teachers are receptive to students' current skill level, and they provide the support, the scaffolding, to help them expand on this current skill level, and then eventually they take the support away so that students can try to solve problems on their own. I can use this in my classroom because it is a way to support my students and get them to kind of understand concepts without fully having to rely on me. They can use me for the support, but then eventually once, they work through it a few times, maybe they can get it by themselves. I also think that this is really important for teachers to use because it gives them an opportunity to bond with their students, and it creates that bond where they can rely on you, but they don't have to rely on you all the time, and you can help them out through difficult problems. And then by the end, it's not like the teacher did all the work, the student did a majority of the work. The teacher just had lended a helping hand throughout the process so that the student feels good about what they did and the teacher feels good for helping them, but they know that the student mostly did it by themselves, and it creates that bond where a teacher and a student can really work together and get the student to feel accomplished. The next concept that I wanted to talk about is working memory. So the working memory is a very important part of our minds and how we interpret information. It's described as the intermediate store, which can hold both temporary storage and active processing and information processing as well. Conscious thinking and reasoning occur here also. When we recall information from our long-term memory, it is called into our working memory because our conscious puts the effort towards remembering it and puts our focus towards it so that we can, use it wherever we're trying to use it. So then working memory also allows us to put our conscious effort into new sensory information. So our brains are always trying to take in new information. So when they do, our conscious effort in our working memory puts that conscious effort towards it and ultimately has a role in helping remember that information and potentially putting it into long-term memory if we put enough focus into it. Um, it the working memory is like an integration of new and old information. Like it can combine them kind of into one to help us expand on new concepts, but also recall old concepts and kind of mix them together to create one like almost schema of new concepts. So obviously this is important for me to know in my classroom because I can use this knowledge from reading about the working memory to understand like how a young child's mind works. It will help me in my teaching because I can make sure to keep my students focused, because when they're focused, they're able to show their conscious effort towards the material, which if they do that, it ultimately leads to greater success of actually remembering the information because they're paying attention to it. If I keep the class engaged, then this should be the case of them, remembering the information better, or at least partly the case, because they're not going to remember everything that I told them. So I think the way that I can keep them kind of engaged is using passion, energy, and emotion in my teaching, like we've discussed a lot in class, to keep them engaged and putting their conscious effort towards remembering the information so that it can go into long-term storage for later use throughout the year.